So would you be able to help us out as the time goes on, once you're re-elected, which I'm pretty positive you will be? You know, can we knock at your door for that, is my question.
You can call on our office for something like this all the time. You know, it's especially for those parents where they need to be working, they need to place their kids in a good child care center where they have trust and comfort that while they're working, their kids are being cared for. But then they don't have the assistance in those initial months as they start their job, so then they have to pull away, and it ends up being just a whole self-defeating situation. You bet, because it's both for your company as well as getting people back on their feet and working. I mean, there's a lot, and for good care of the child. You want all of those things. So yes, you bet. I'm happy to help on something like that.
There's a problem with funding on this, Congressman, because right now a parent or a mom who cannot afford child support has to apply for assistance, and he or she has to wait 6 months, up to 6 months or 4 months to get the assistance. Now, that means that they are either going to be off the job or they just, I mean, the timing is very crucial in this. So we have to improve this process, or get the funding in there, or get the process moving. You know?
Well, I agree, and you know, just recently, and I don't know where anybody is on this, but politically, I felt this has been a very difficult period, economic period we've come through. People are starting to get back on their feet, want to get everybody back on their feet. I supported the extension of these unemployment insurance for 6 more months. Good for you. Okay. But there were a number in the Senate, in the Republican side, that refused to do it for a long time. So it started at the top, in some respects, about delaying payments. We need to have an efficient, effective system that gets people, you know, their assistance so that they can get it to you guys, so that you can care for the children, so that they can get a job and get back to work.
Yeah, right.
So you just need to give me places where you think, as a federal elected official, I can help.
Okay.
And I will do my best.
Thank you. Mr. Wahid Bhatt, do you have a question?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
My name is Wahid Bhatt. I'm a retired teacher, and right now I'm a small businessman, self-employed, dealing with stock market and real estate. And because you are in a committee involving finance and all that, so I was reading an article just yesterday, and then I copied it and I will read it to you. And this is all pro-Republican and maybe anti-Democrat, but you can give your view on this, what it says. Is it right or wrong?
All right, you better sit down. You better sit down before I give you my answer. I can tell you that right now.
Okay. The federal government is burning through cash at a rate that almost impossible to imagine.
This is going to be fun.
We are broke.
This is going to be fun.
We are broke, but we are adding roughly $5 billion to the national debt every day. The spending spree has included $1 trillion stimulus that did not work. In less than 2 years, we have seen the biggest increase in annual spending, more than $3.6 trillion, the biggest deficit, more than $1.4 trillion, and now face a record national debt, more than $13 trillion. Roughly 43 cents out of every dollar spent by Washington is borrowed money. Do we want our children and grandchildren to pay for this? People are losing their homes, they are losing their businesses, and they are losing their jobs. Government spending, debt, and right along with the economy are an average American's top concerns. My question to you as a congressman is, are these your concerns, and what you and Obama government will be doing about them, and what are your plans?
Okay, those are all very good questions. If I could figure out my iPad, I'd show you some charts, but I'll figure that out in a second.
You ready for that?
All right, the point is, we have a terrible debt, okay? And that debt's costing us a lot of money. Let's not forget how we got here, okay? Let's not forget how we got here. You don't change something like that overnight. If you borrow a lot of money, you're part of your business, it takes you a while to pay it back unless you hit the lottery, okay? So let's not forget how we got here. When you cut taxes for the wealthiest people in America, which may have benefits, but that's what we did in 2001 and 2002 under George Bush. You cut taxes for the wealthiest people in America, then you prosecute 2 wars without paying for them, and then you don't put any police on Wall Street. It caused a terrible crash. And when people are laid off, revenue, tax revenue drops, and demand for services goes up. And everything in between is debt. And so we went into something where all of a sudden the revenue stops, unemployment, COBRA, keeping teachers, firefighters, policemen employed at the state level, trying to stimulate the economy through infrastructure jobs, transportation, I-225 and Colfax, that kind of stuff. That costs money. So part of what you're doing is to deal with immediate emergency problems. Part of what you're doing is investing in infrastructure for the future. So you don't, in a business, you don't treat an investment, a long-term investment, the same way you do an operating cost. But what we've got is less revenue, and it started in 2001 and 2002. The debt, under Clinton, we were back in a surplus situation. We fell immediately into a deficit starting in 2001, 2002. Business fell off, but tax revenues were cut. Then we spent $1 trillion on wars in the Middle East, rightly or wrongly, but we spent $1 trillion without really making any budgetary change that paid for that. And then we have this tremendous fall off in the economy. What we're doing is the first thing is to get the revenue side straightened up by putting people back to work. As you put them back to work, they become good taxpayers again, and they don't need as much assistance. So you don't have as much demand there. As we draw down troops in Iraq, we've gone from $141 billion when I first was elected to Congress in 2007 to our budget for Iraq next year is $65 billion to $20 billion. Our costs have gone up in Afghanistan, but not as much as we've shrunk our costs in Iraq. That's where you start. You look for fraud, waste, and abuse, but then you've got to deal with some serious long-term expenses. It could be Social Security and Medicare. How do we underwrite them properly, make them solvent in the long run, but also not have a crushing expense to the country? We have some very difficult choices we have to make. But in my opinion, and I asked the chairman of the question was asked of the chairman of the Federal Reserve, in the short run, we got to get people back to work. But after a year or two, we've then really got to focus on expense and revenue. And then long term, we've got to look at entitlements. Medicare, Social Security, how can we make sure that those programs are solvent, strong, that they continue to provide assistance to seniors so that they have healthy, dignified lives in their senior years. None of these questions are easy. We've got to address them, but I know that we can. I know this country can do it. And if we build our economy, then that helps deal with the overall budget itself. I mean, one of the things that happened in the 90s is we did make some difficult choices. The economy boomed. We started paying the debt like crazy, and we were heading into a real surplus situation, at which time the Republican administration decided, no, instead of having this surplus, we'll cut the taxes. Then we had the wars, and then we were upside down. It was a bad recipe.
But how come with all that stimulus
Oh,
and
well,
all
okay.
that spending?
No, but I will tell you the stimulus. Stimulus, we lost $17 trillion of wealth between the summer of 2007 and the end of 2008, early 2009. $17 trillion, far more than at any time in this country's history. From the stimulus,